Well, it's another harvest day here on the homestead, and today it's going to be muscadine and possibly some elderberry. We'll have to see. The last few years we've kind of been competing with the birds for those elderberries. Got Sarge with me here. Got my harvest apron on with my bowl, and I'm ready. And of course, it's another hot day, so the hair has gone up. I know last year when we were picking our muscadines, I know Michael had talked a little bit about the medicinal benefits, and so I won't rehash all of that today. I'll just link that for you right up here. If you haven't seen it, you can catch that video. But basically, muscadines are very high in antioxidants, so much so that they're even higher than blueberries, and that's one of the reasons why we grow them. We also use the leaves, which are just like grape leaves because muscadines are a type of grapes. We use these in our pickle making process because of the high tannin content. The tannins is what will actually keep your pickles crispy. Generally, the muscadine come into season about the same time the elderberry do. And so it's always a busy time of year for us with harvesting. But if we do harvest elderberry today, I'm going to go ahead and share a recipe with you all for our gummies that we use throughout the winter. I think last year I shared my recipe for my basic elderberry syrup, and that is what we will use to make the gummies. So our muscadine here, I don't really remember which variety they are, but when they turn a nice pretty purple color, that's when we pick them. There are some that are green and they stay green, but ours start out green and then they turn to this pretty purple color. That's when we know it's time to pick. This tunnel that Michael made me is absolutely dreamy, but if you're afraid of spiders, don't do it, because spiders love making their webs up under here, and I've already ran into two.
We're heading down to Canopy Creek now, and we're going to scope out the elderberry and plan for the harvest.
So we are down here in the park area, down by the creek and the hunting camp, and we have found, you know, a significant amount.
A bonanza.
It's not a bonanza, but there's enough to make a few jars, and hopefully we'll get more over in Canopy Creek.
Making our way.
We have some popping right here. The birds will eat like 80% of everything, so we have to get to them quick.
When the going gets tough and you're done pretending, life on the homestead recommended.
There used to be a patch of elderberry right behind me, but I don't know if you can see, this past spring a tree fell down during the storm and took out most of the elderberry bushes that were here. I do see a few elderberry back up in there, so the bushes are still alive. Maybe we'll be able to harvest some of the berries.
We've seen some odd things over the years. Big creatures, you know, bipedal, 250 pounds, maybe more than that, maybe 400 pounds, anywhere from 7 foot to 7.5 feet tall, massive, unknown. So as long as you mind your business and we leave them alone, they leave us alone, we just stay on our trails. I'm going to leave it at that.
We've now made it down to Canopy Creek, which is where our huge elderberry grove used to be. We've lost a lot of the bushes, it seems like, maybe from the storms this year. But there's still some production, and we're going to try to harvest everything we can.
Here's a little elderberry for you. That's a nice pod. Look at that. It's beautiful.
No more struggling to get by when you're living in God's light.
So because we have to fight the birds and apparently also grasshoppers to get first access to these elderberries, we are having to pick them when they're not 100% ripe. Elderberry, if you're not familiar, the berries are on what we call umbrels. They kind of look like little umbrellas. And so they're called umbrels. About 90 to 95% of the umbrels that we picked tonight are ripe, but there's a small percentage where the berries are green or red instead of the dark black. So now is the tedious task of getting all of the berries off of the umbrel. And some people use a fork, some people throw them in the freezer and then shake them and they fall right off. I don't have freezer space because it's in the middle of harvest season still, and we're constantly throwing tomatoes and things into the freezer. So I just use my hands and fingers and just pull them right off into a bowl, and then I'll separate out any green ones that may fall in. We also ended up with a nice big bowl of Muscadine grapes, and they're starting to pop out on the vines out there, so we'll be picking every day for the next week or two. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and make my elderberry syrup. I did a video on that with the full recipe last year, so I'll make sure I link that video in the description below and at the end of this video. So basically I'm just going to go ahead and simmer my berries on the stove with some water and a few other ingredients like whole cloves, some cinnamon sticks, some fresh ginger, some orange slices, things like that. So there's lots of different recipes out there. I recommend trying several different kinds, find the one you like, and stick with it. You can definitely get a little creative with this recipe. I am out of oranges in the house. I have only lemons and limes. I'm not going to put that into my elderberry syrup. I do have some granulated orange peel that I use in my hot tea. So I'm just going to take a tablespoon or two of this and throw it into the pot. I am going to add about a 1/4 cup of my dried echinacea into the pot as an extra immune boosting property. And we're going to start taking these gummies now in preparation for cold and flu season, which will be coming up shortly. So I finished making my elderberry syrup. I'm going to take 2 cups of the syrup and I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of some grass-fed beef gelatin. And I'm going to whisk it in, and then I'll be ready to pour it into the molds. And now my gummies are ready for the refrigerator, and they'll just sit for a couple of hours. I'll pop them out of the molds and I'll store them in a mason jar in the refrigerator. So I'm back in the garden and I am preparing the bed behind me. I had to pull a few weeds, and I'm gonna leave my green onions there. Some of them I had to pull out because when I was pulling weeds they came out, but those are still in the ground. I'm gonna leave those there. But anyway, so I'm preparing the bed behind me for my second round of green beans. So I'm gonna put those in the ground today. I need about 50 to 60 days to be able to harvest the green beans. So I need to get them in the ground in the next week or so. And there's no better time than the present.
Making our way how God intended. Life on the homestead recommended. When the going gets tough and you're done pretending. Life on the homestead recommended. There are no more 9 to 5 when you're living between the pines. No more struggling to get by when you're living in God's light. the homestead life.
All right, well, that's it for the green beans. I've got them all planted. And then next week, I'm gonna get my fall carrots in the ground as well. It's not very hot out here today, but I'm dripping. It's just very humid. It's overcast. There might be some rain coming a little bit later. Even though it may call for some rain this afternoon, I'm gonna go ahead and water in my seedlings. I always water in my seedlings. I've been fooled before, and it calls for rain and then we don't get any rain. So I'm gonna lightly water them in, and then if it rains, it won't matter. So I just thought I would share with you all how we do our seed saving for the following year. And several weeks back, I harvested all of our purple hull peas and some kidney beans and cannellini beans, which those didn't do too well. They got eaten up by the deer and rabbits, but we do have enough to seed save. So I've got Michael here. I'll put him to work. And he is finishing the shelling process of the purple hull peas. We took the majority of them, put them in a pillowcase, and kind of beat them on the ground a little bit, and that shelled the majority of them. But he's finishing up, and then I'm gonna save some for next year's garden. So I've already got my packets labeled, and I'm gonna put the seeds in and store them. I was surprised when I was walking the property the other day, and I found a passion flower vine that was growing. I did not plant it on the property, and they do grow wild down here in the south. So I harvested a couple of the fruits off of the vine, and I am drying out some of the seeds, and then next year in my garden area across one of my trellises, I'm gonna go ahead and plant a passion flower vine, or maybe I'll plant several, we'll see.
Not bad for 60.